Today, May 16th, the silence just ran out of support, not gradually, not as a mood shifting or a feeling building. As a fact, a precise planetary fact about where the sky is positioned right now and what that does to everything that has been held back, held in, held quiet for longer than it was ever meant to be. A new moon opened in Taurus today, and this one is different. This one doesn't just mark a beginning, it breaks a seal. Something that had nowhere to go for months just found its exit point. And the confession that someone has been sitting with, the one they have been rearranging their entire interior life around, not saying, it no longer has the planetary support it needs to stay unspoken. There is a specific kind of pressure that lives inside truth that hasn't been spoken yet. Not a pressure that screams, a pressure that accumulates. The kind that makes someone reorganize their day around avoiding a particular conversation, that makes them reach for their phone and then set it down again, that makes an ordinary Tuesday afternoon feel heavier than it should. That pressure reached a tipping point today. Not metaphorically, as a direct consequence of what shifted in the sky. You know this. Somewhere in you. That's why you're here. You didn't arrive here by accident. Something in you recognized this window before your mind had the language for it. Recognized that today was going to require your full presence, not your distracted half-attention, but the version of you that is genuinely ready to receive what this transmission carries. Before we go any further, take 1 second. Like this video, subscribe, and comment below. I'm ready to receive. Not for the algorithm, for you. As proof to yourself that you showed up for this fully on the exact day it was meant to reach you. Because what arrives in the next several minutes is not general. It is for the person who has been standing at a particular kind of threshold, not the threshold of hoping, but the threshold of knowing. The one where you already feel what is coming but haven't yet given yourself permission to trust it. Stay here. What comes next is the part most people miss. Here is something that doesn't get said enough about the people who end up in cosmic windows like this one. It is not that they are special in some vague, flattering way. It is that they made a specific internal choice, probably more than once, that most people don't make. There was a fork. You know the one. Maybe it was a moment when the comfortable interpretation was right there, available, practically handed to you. The version of the story where you stopped caring, moved on, called it done, and meant it. The door to that version was open. It would have been so much easier to walk through it. And you didn't. Not because you were stubborn. Not because you were holding on to something in a way that wasn't healthy, but because something inside you, below the level of decision, below the level of strategy, simply registered that the real thing was still alive. And you chose to honor that registration even when nothing around you confirmed it was wise to do so. That choice, quiet, private, made with no audience and no guarantee, is exactly what positioned you for this window. The new moon in Taurus doesn't open for people who settled for the easier version of the story. It opens for people who, at the exact moment when walking away, would have felt like maturity, felt something true instead, and stayed with it. That is not a small thing. That is the credential. You arrived at today not by luck. You arrived by what you refused to let go of when letting go was being presented as the only reasonable option. And what you were holding quietly, without performing it outward, without requiring anyone else to confirm it was worth holding, is about to be met. To understand what is actually happening today, you need to understand what a new moon in Taurus does, and not in astrological terms, but in human ones, in the language of what it does to people, to connections, to the things that have been living in the space between what is felt and what is said. Taurus is the part of the sky that governs what endures, not what flashes, what stays. It rules the things that are built slowly, that require patience, not as a virtue, but as a material. The way a craftsman needs time, the way they need tools. Taurus is the energy that says, what is real does not need to hurry. What is real shows up anyway, eventually, because real things have a kind of gravity that eventually bends everything around them toward the truth. Taurus also governs the body, the physical, sensory, present tense experience of being alive. And this is important. Because what Taurus activates doesn't live in the abstract. It lives in the hands, in the jaw, in the specific quality of quiet that descends on someone at 11 p.m. when they have been pretending all day that they are not thinking about you. A new moon in any sign is a reset point, the moment when the sky goes dark and then begins a new cycle. But in Taurus, a new moon is not just a beginning. It is a reckoning with what has been quietly, stubbornly, unmovably true all along. Taurus new moons don't introduce new emotional material. They force the existing material, the feelings that have been living underground, the truths that both people in a connection have been orbiting around without naming, to the surface, not gently, with the full weight of something that has been patient long enough and is done being patient. Now layer onto this what the sky is doing around this new moon specifically. Venus, the planet that governs love, desire, and the pull between two people, is exactly positioned in a way that makes emotional honesty not just possible, but, for the people most affected by this window, nearly impossible to resist. Venus doesn't make people feel more love right now. She makes them feel how much they have been pretending not to feel it. The gap between what someone carries and what they have been presenting to the world, that gap narrows dramatically under Venus' influence in Taurus. The cost of maintaining the distance suddenly exceeds the cost of telling the truth. This is not a gentle nudge. This is a planetary inversion, where holding back becomes harder than letting go. And then there is Saturn, the force that governs timing, structure, and what gets made permanent. Saturn is not cruel when it delays things. Saturn is surgical. It does not allow real things to arrive before both the feeling and the person are ready for what that arrival requires. Today, Saturn is in a position that allows doors to open that it has been holding closed, not forever, but for exactly as long as it needed to hold them. The feeling that something was taking too long, that you were being tested past the point of what was reasonable, that feeling was not wrong. You were being tested. But the test wasn't about your endurance. It was about who you were becoming while you waited. And the reason it reaches you specifically, the reason this transmission found you on this day rather than sliding past, is that you are on the receiving end of a confession that is finding its courage right now, in real time, whether or not the words have been sent yet. This portal does not activate for everyone. That is not a harsh thing. It is a precise one. It opens specifically and exclusively for people who have done something that most people haven't. This is why most people watching something like this today will feel it at the surface. Interesting, resonant, maybe even moving, but will not feel it land in the deep place where things actually change. They haven't done what you did. And what you did is this. You held a standard you never announced. You didn't post about it. You didn't make it a declaration. You didn't turn it into a boundary with a name and a policy. At some level below language, you simply knew what was real and what wasn't, what reached you and what only looked like it did. And when things fell below that standard, you registered the falling without drama, quietly, without asking anyone to understand why. That kind of discernment, the kind that lives below words, is extraordinarily rare, and it is not developed through ease. That was not love failing. That was love being honest. When things didn't become what they should have been, what you were experiencing wasn't love's absence. It was love's accuracy, telling you the difference between what was real and what was performing real. That was not you being unworthy of receiving. That was them being unready to give. The distinction matters more than you may have understood at the time, because one of those interpretations leaves you smaller and the other leaves you intact. That was not the universe withholding. That was the universe building. Building what exactly? The very thing you are carrying right now, the settled, unshowy, bone-deep knowledge of what you actually need and what you will and will not accept. That knowing was assembled slowly, at cost, without announcement. It is the thing this portal requires at the door. Where it once felt like you were simply surviving a silence, it now reveals itself as something more precise. You were being made into the version of yourself capable of receiving what this portal carries, not surviving it, not managing it, becoming through it. And what you've become, without fanfare, without witness, without ever requiring anyone to confirm it was worth the cost, is someone whose interior is now genuinely ready for what arrives next. That is not a small thing. That is everything. The universe does not delay out of cruelty. It delays out of precision. And the precision of this particular delay, the one that kept this connection suspended, the one that kept certain words unspoken, the one that kept the distance intact longer than you thought you could bear, was not random. It was designed. Not around the other person's timeline, around yours. If this had arrived a year ago, if the confession had come through, if the door had opened when you were still standing in a different version of yourself, you would have arrived at the connection still needing it to answer something. You were still carrying an unresolved question at the center of you, one you may not have even been able to name, about whether you were genuinely worth being chosen, worth being seen fully, worth someone dismantling their own defenses for. If the connection had arrived while that question was still running, the whole dynamic would have organized itself around that question. Not around the two of you genuinely meeting. Around you needing the meeting to prove something. What arrives now can be received as connection rather than confirmation. That distinction is the entire difference between a relationship that feeds you and a relationship that consumes you. A year ago, you would have taken their arrival as evidence of your worth, evidence that you hadn't imagined what you felt, evidence that what was between you was real. You would have needed it to be evidence. And that need would have made you slightly unavailable to the actual person because you would have been too busy receiving the proof to be present for the contact. What if the silence wasn't cruelty? What if it was the universe's most precise act of protection, the specific kind that only becomes visible once you're on the other side of it? That need is quieter now, or it's gone. Not because you stopped wanting the connection, but because somewhere in this window of waiting, you stopped needing it to tell you who you are. The question it was supposed to answer resolved itself without the answer. And that resolution, quiet, private, arriving not with a moment you can point to, but with a slow recognition that something in you had stopped asking, is the reason the door can now open safely. This is why the delay lasted as long as it did. Not because you hadn't been ready for long enough, because you needed to stop needing it to be what you needed it to be. And now that you have, what comes through can be real. For the first time, entirely real, not because time passed, because something in you genuinely changed its relationship to needing the answer. Right now, in this exact window, on this specific day, there is someone sitting with something they have not yet said, not suppressing it, not rationalizing it, sitting at the edge of it with the full weight of what honesty would require them to acknowledge about themselves, about what they want, about what they have spent a significant amount of time pretending they don't want. This person is not afraid of you. They are afraid of themselves, specifically of the version of themselves that telling the truth would make undeniable. Because once you say certain things out loud, you can't unknow that you said them. Once you admit what you feel, you can't maintain the version of yourself that was managing fine without admitting it. They have been sitting in the space just before that admission, not moving forward into it, not retreating away from it, simply sitting there, carrying the full weight of what they haven't yet let themselves say. There is a cliff here, and they have been standing at its edge for longer than you know. And the specific texture of that carrying is not comfortable. The Taurus new moon, combined with Venus at this position in the sky, does something very particular to people in this state. It makes the weight of the unsaid thing heavier than the weight of saying it. The cost of continuing to hold back quietly surpasses the cost of speaking, not abstractly, physically, in the way they move through the day, in the quality of their attention during ordinary moments, in the way a sentence will begin in their mind about something else entirely and arrive at the thought of you before it completes. Their ordinary day looks normal from the outside. They are doing what they normally do, the tasks, the routines, the conversations that require their surface attention. But underneath all of it, something runs like a persistent background signal that will not be redirected. Your name, the unfinished conversation, the thing they almost said once and didn't. It is not dramatic obsession, it is the specific quality of a thought that has been filed but refuses to stay there. They open a drawer for something else, and there it is. There is a specific moment happening for this person right now, or very soon. They are in the middle of something ordinary, not a dramatic setting, not a moment they would ever have chosen for this, when the awareness of what they haven't said lands in them with a clarity that their usual strategies cannot redirect. Every reason they have assembled for the delay, every justification they have used to explain the silence to themselves becomes visible as exactly what it is, not a conclusion, a postponement. And today, under this sky, postponements are losing their ability to feel reasonable. They are not going to collapse under this. They are not desperate. They are at the edge of something they have been approaching for months, slowly, with a kind of dignified dread, the way someone approaches a conversation they know they cannot avoid without cost. They are going to reach out, or begin to, or allow themselves to fully feel the magnitude of what they feel, because the internal pressure of not doing so has become genuinely impossible to sustain. The confession is not just alive in them, it is looking for an opening. This is that opening. This is not a promise of what they will do. It is a description of where they are. What they do with it is theirs to decide. But once that recognition ignites, it does not go quiet. It only waits for courage to catch up to it. You are not being tested right now. You are being asked to show yourself what you have actually become. There are two ways to stand in this moment. They look identical from the outside. The difference is entirely interior and entirely everything. One way, the mind is already moving. It is doing the work it does when something feels possible but uncertain, organizing scenarios, planning responses, running the quiet background program of anticipating outcomes and steering toward the acceptable ones. There is a specific quality to this state, a tightening. Not fear exactly, but the particular kind of mental busyness that exists to prevent you from having to simply be in the uncertainty. The hands are stilled, the face is calm, but something behind the surface is gripping, holding the shape of the outcome, trying to make sure that what arrives lands in the version of the story that was already pre-approved. This state is exhausting in a way that is difficult to name because it looks like stillness from the outside. It feels, from the inside, like running without moving. The other way, something set down, not resigned. The feeling is not heavy or defeated. It is the specific quality of someone who has stopped trying to hold the river's shape in their hands, the shoulders at rest without having been consciously lowered. A breath that goes slightly deeper than the breaths before it. The thought of this person arriving not as a problem to be managed, but simply as a fact of the interior, present, felt, no longer requiring a strategy around it. Not indifference, not detachment. Just the specific quality of being fully inside the moment rather than working to control what the moment produces. Most people mistake this moment for fate calling them back. It is not. It is the soul running one final check, not to test whether you are strong, but to confirm whether you have actually changed or only believe you have. The gripping state and the released state feel, from inside, like the difference between believing you are ready and actually being ready. One of them needs to know what happens next in order to feel stable. The other already has stability, not because it knows what happens next, but because it has stopped requiring the knowing as a condition of being okay. One reaches toward the outcome to feel safe. The other simply waits, open, without needing to steer. The soul does not ask this question to punish you. It asks it because the answer determines everything that follows, not as consequence, but as direction. And here is the question that sits between these two states, not as a philosophical exercise, but as something you can feel right now if you let it land. Are you holding this moment, or are you letting it hold you? Feel the difference in your body. One of those pulls something tight, the other releases it. That sensation, the tightening or the releasing, tells you exactly which version of yourself you are standing in right now, not as a judgment, as information. That question, sat with honestly, is capable of collapsing an old karmic cycle permanently. Every connection that carries real weight is also a contract, not a romantic agreement, a soul one, a prearranged curriculum about what would be activated, what would be forced to the surface, what would be impossible to continue avoiding in the presence of this particular other person. The soul contract in this connection was always about timing, not as a lesson about patience. Patience is just the visible surface of it. The deeper lesson was this, that love and genuine readiness are two different things, and for love to become real, not performed, not longed for, not almost, both people need to be standing in the same level of interior readiness simultaneously. Not close, not nearly, simultaneously. And the word simultaneously is important here because this contract is not just about you arriving. It is about both people arriving at the same moment, with the same level of truth about what they actually need. This is not a lesson the mind can think its way through. It can only be lived, specifically in the exact form it takes when the lesson is real and the stakes are genuine and the longing is not abstract. The contract chose this particular connection because this particular person, with their specific quality of presence, was the only context in which this lesson would actually teach what it came to teach. And the particular cruelty and grace of timing contracts is that you cannot fake your way through the lesson. You cannot think your way to readiness. You cannot decide to be ready because you want to be. Something in the structure of you has to actually shift. The part that was still waiting for external confirmation that you were worth choosing, the part that needed arrival as evidence, the part that was still carrying the question underneath the love. That part has to genuinely complete its process, and that process cannot be rushed, no matter how much wanting you bring to it. This is why Saturn governs these contracts specifically. Saturn doesn't care about your feelings. It cares about the lesson. It will hold a door closed, not because it is cruel, but because it knows, with the cold precision of planetary law, that opening the door before the lesson is genuinely complete will produce a reunion that functions as repetition, not resolution. It has seen this before. It will not allow it. The grief of recognizing this is real. Give it a moment. Because what it means is that the delay you lived through wasn't a punishment, wasn't neglect, wasn't the universe indifferent to your particular ache. It was Saturn watching the lesson, waiting for the specific internal movement that could not be performed. The grief is real because the waiting was real, and the cost was real, and you paid it in the currency of ordinary days that were quietly harder than they looked. That cost deserves acknowledgement, not minimized, not reframed too quickly into purpose. Simply, it was hard. And you paid it anyway. The contract was never a promise of forever. It was a guarantee of transformation. And completion for a timing contract doesn't look like reunion necessarily. It looks like the moment you stop trying to force arrival before both of you are genuinely ready. It looks like being able to hold what you feel without collapsing the space that feeling needs in order to land correctly. Where it once felt like urgency, get this resolved, get an answer, get something you can hold, it now feels like the specific quiet of someone who knows that what is real does not require forcing. What is real arrives in its own form when the form is ready to hold it. The contract was always about what you were becoming, not about whether they stayed to witness it. What you became is already real, regardless of what they do next. Your body already knows that something shifted. Not as a belief you're holding, as a physical fact you're living inside. There is a quiet in you right now that is different from the quiet of before. Not numb. You know the difference between those two states now, and this is not numbness. Numbness has a flatness to it, an absence. What you are carrying now has a presence, a stillness that doesn't feel empty but settled, the way a room feels after something has been properly placed rather than abandoned. Sleep has been arriving differently, earlier sometimes, with less of the residue that used to sit in the first few minutes of waking, the reaching back for the worry, the inventory of what remained unresolved. You may notice mornings where you simply wake up inside the day without the transitional pause where the weight of the situation reimposed itself before the coffee was made. There is a new quality to how you move through the middle of the day. Not happiness exactly, not a positive mood that requires sustaining, a sufficiency. A sense of being fully inside the moment you are in, rather than perpetually preparing for the moment after it. This is not something you are achieving. It is something that is arriving on its own, below the level of effort. The name, when it arrives in your awareness, passes through differently. Where it once came with a kind of bracing, the body organizing itself around the feeling before the mind had even consciously registered the thought. Now it arrives and moves, still present, still felt, but no longer requiring the body to prepare for impact. You feel it, and then the next moment comes, and you are inside that one too. The hook is gone, not the feeling, just the hook. The chest is not carrying the same low-level readiness it was carrying 6 months ago. That readiness, the anticipatory quality that never fully rested, that kept something in you slightly tensed against what might arrive or not arrive, has begun to release its contract with your nervous system. Not all at once. In intervals. In the specific intervals of days when nothing happened that required you to brace and you noticed quietly that you hadn't been bracing. This is not integration as an idea. This is integration as a physical fact. The kind the body reports without being asked. The kind that shows up in sleep patterns and the quality of an afternoon. Something that has been monitoring at a low, constant level has begun to rest. Your body is becoming still in a way that has no urgency behind it. Not because the situation is resolved, because something in you has resolved, something at a deeper level than the situation itself can touch. This is not the quiet of having given up. This is the quiet of something that is genuinely finished. The body knows the difference, even when the mind is still catching up. Something is stabilizing in the life that opens from this frequency. And it stabilizes not with announcement, not with a moment you can circle on a calendar, but in the specific quiet way that genuine shifts arrive, through decisions that feel cleaner, through the absence of a particular kind of internal argument that used to be constant. Decisions feel cleaner, not because life became simpler or the options became more obvious, Because the conflict that used to live underneath every decision, the part of you that was always negotiating between what you actually knew and what you were willing to admit you knew, has gone quiet. Where it once took a specific quality of internal convincing to hold certain things in place, it now takes effort to understand why they were ever in question. Something shifted at the root. What could live here before cannot live here now. What used to feel exciting but hollow now registers as hollow before it even fully arrives. You don't need the whole experience to know. Your body identifies the signal before the experience completes, the way a trained ear hears a wrong note before the phrase finishes. This isn't cynicism. This is discernment that has finally been calibrated to your actual frequency, rather than the frequency you used to settle for. What used to feel like safety is beginning to feel like a ceiling. Not all at once, in specific moments. A moment when an option that would have once felt reassuring now feels like something built too small for who you are now. The comfort is there, but underneath the comfort is the recognition that comfort that requires you to minimize yourself is not actually safety. It is just a familiar kind of confinement. The universe is no longer trying to guide you toward alignment. It is beginning to respond to the alignment you already carry. This is why the synchronicities are changing their character. They are less like arrows pointing you somewhere and more like mirrors confirming where you already are. Things that arrive in your field now have a different quality. They match something that already exists in you, rather than pointing toward something you haven't yet become. Other people's intentions are easier to read, not because you became suspicious, but because you are no longer filtering their signals through the static of your own unresolved questions. Where it once required interpretation, where you had to reason your way to an assessment of someone's intentions, it now arrives directly. You feel the quality of someone's presence before the interaction is complete. You know what is genuine and what is performance, not as a paranoid skill, as a natural consequence of being more genuinely present inside your own interior. You are not waiting to become someone. The becoming already happened, in private, without announcement, in the exact window where it had to happen to be real. What is here now is not preparation, it is arrival. After this activation, and it is an activation whether or not it feels dramatic from the inside, there are things your nervous system simply cannot continue to accommodate, not as a decision you made, as a biological reality about what your system has now been calibrated to recognize. You can no longer comfortably hold yourself at emotional arm's length from your own interior to make someone else comfortable with their ambiguity. This is the first thing that stops being available, the posture of waiting for someone who knows exactly what they feel to decide whether to let you know it. The waiting posture used to feel like patience. It will now register almost immediately as a particular kind of friction, not dramatic, not angry, but the specific discomfort of being asked to occupy a position that is no longer dimensioned correctly for who you are. The weight of a connection that is ambiguous by someone else's preference, where you are carrying full presence and the other person is comfortable in the unclarity, that weight becomes perceptible now in a way it wasn't before, not as resentment, as information. The asymmetry is legible to your body in a way that bypasses the mind's tendency to explain it away, to extend more good faith than the data supports, to wait for the dynamic to become what it hasn't yet chosen to become. And this, the experience of having your depth met with someone's comfort in keeping things undefined, this will no longer pass through you as something you can convert into patience. Where you once could absorb the ambiguity and continue, your system will now produce a clear signal. This is not the quality of contact you are built for now. Not because you became demanding, because you became honest, explaining your depth to someone who receives your clarity as evidence that you are too much. That specific dynamic where your honesty about what you feel becomes the reason the other person feels entitled to more distance. That is over, not because you decided to stop doing it, because your nervous system will now produce something close to nausea at the idea of performing smallness to make someone else comfortable with their own avoidance. This is not hardness. This is discernment made permanent by experience. Love does not leave your life after this. It upgrades. Everything that enters from here must meet you where you actually stand. If this soul steps back into your field now, they will not be returning to the person they left. That version of you completed its contract. What they return to is someone whose clarity they will feel before the first full sentence is spoken, not as a wall, not as coldness, but as a quality of groundedness that is unmistakable. The question of whether they return is no longer the question that governs your interior. But if and when the answer arrives, in whatever form it arrives, you will receive it accurately, for the first time, without hope distorting the signal in one direction and without fear distorting it in the other. You are not waiting with held breath. You are simply present, grounded, and fully capable of seeing what is actually there rather than what you are hoping is there or fearing isn't. Here is what that means in practice. If they return and what they bring is genuinely different, not just the presence of them, but the quality of their presence, the evidence of something that actually shifted in them rather than a missing you that temporarily resembled change, you will know. Your body will register the difference between someone who transformed and someone who simply felt your absence long enough to want to stop feeling it. Those two things produce completely different physical signals in a person calibrated the way you are now calibrated. Transformation has a specific texture. Missing has a different one. You will not confuse them. And what you do with what you read clearly, that will be genuine choice, not reaction. Not a flood of longing converting ambiguous signals into what you hope they mean. Not a wall of self-protection converting real signals into what you fear they might cost. A clear read, an honest response. Contact that is actual for the first time because both people arrived with less noise between what they feel and what they present. If they do not return, if this window passes without the confession finding its voice, if the courage doesn't quite catch up to the recognition on this cycle, you lose nothing you were ever actually holding. What you built in yourself during this window is yours. It belongs to you independent of their choice. The internal shift is not contingent on their participation to be real, and the absence, received from this ground, will not hollow you. It will simply confirm what you have already, quietly, without quite naming it, begun to know, that you are complete in a way that doesn't require a particular person's arrival to stay true. Whether they arrive or not, you are no longer the person whose answer to that question changes everything. That is not a small shift. That is the whole shift. If something in this landed somewhere specific, not just in your thoughts, but in the part of you that responds before thought, do one thing right now. Like this video, not as a gesture toward an algorithm, as a signal to yourself that you were present for this, on this day, when this particular transmission found you. Subscribe so the next window doesn't pass without you in it. These transmissions build on each other. What opened today connects directly to what arrives in the next cycle. And in the comments, write, "The confession has my name on it." Say it out loud as you type it. For your own nervous system, words spoken with intention complete something that silent reading leaves open. And if someone you know is sitting at this exact threshold, the one between knowing and saying, between feeling and allowing themselves to act on it, share this with them. Your soul already knows who. Something has already landed. Not in the future, now. Not as something approaching from a distance, but as something that has been quietly, steadily, without drama or announcement, arriving into the space you cleared for it. Today, May 16th, the new moon in Taurus sealed something. And what it sealed is not a door closing, it is a foundation settling. The kind of settling that doesn't make a sound because it doesn't need to, because it is already done. You don't have to reach toward what is coming. You only have to be still enough to notice that it is already here, in the quality of your breath right now, in the specific quiet behind your eyes, in the way the weight you've been carrying has, without your having asked it to, become something that no longer needs carrying at all.